But Corsair has finally gotten around to releasing an RGB power supply cable strip. Now I want to make it very clear up front, this is not a power cable. Unlike the Lian Li solution, which includes the power cable itself, it's an extension cable. This is intended for mounting to your existing power supply cables. Each kit includes 2 of the RGB strips. These are 200 millimeters in length. There's 100 ARGB LEDs. Now Corsair is showing this as individually addressable ARGBs. I'll show you here in just a little bit, but in the Corsair IQ software, you can address up to 25 of those. Now Corsair offers you a couple of different solutions to control the RGB lighting on these. Now you can use your motherboard for RGB lighting control. On the end of each strip are 2 connections. You get the Corsair 3-pin connector. The kit does include a cable which you plug into that, and then that converts it into a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB connector. Again, that will connect up to your motherboard or your favorite RGB controller for that matter. And then you can use your motherboard software to gain control over that. Something I want to point out real quick is during this video, I'm showing you the Lighting Node Pro. Now it works fine when I've got 2 of the RGB strips together. But when I introduce a third one, as you can see here in the video, there's this artifacting that's taking place. Again, when I use 2 strips with the Lighting Node Pro, it works fine. With 3, this always is present. Now, I did use a Commander Pro as a test. It doesn't have this problem. It works fine with 3 strips. Now, I swapped in a second Lighting Node Pro, and it had the same problem. So I don't know if there's some issue specifically with the Lighting Node Pro or what the problem is. Now, what you see on the screen here is with the SATA Y power injector cable attached. I noticed this problem with or without that cable. I've opened a support ticket with Corsair. I will update it in the comments below if they give me a solution or what the issue is. But if you intend on using 3 strips together, I would highly recommend at this point that you choose a Commander Pro or a Commander Core XT. If you want to use one of the Corsair controllers to get IQ control over the RGB lighting, basically it's the Lighting Node Pro, the Commander Pro, or the Commander Core XT. You're just going to take that 3-pin connector, plug it into an available RGB slot on that controller, and then in IQ, make sure you've got the latest IQ version, and it should install the component for that controller. And once that's available, you may have to restart IQ once or twice to get that going. It's a fairly simple process, but once that's done, go to the lighting setup or the 3-pin lighting setup for that particular controller, and then from there you should be able to select the RGB power supply cables. You'll get 25 RGB LEDs that you can individually control at that point, and of course that will control the whole strip. Now, if you have daisy chained additional strips onto the first one, all of these are just going to get the same exact lighting effect. So you can't control all the strips together as individual entities. You get control over the first one, the first 25 LEDs, and then everything that's daisy chained onto it is going to get the same effect. Now, one thing I don't see available is an IQ Link adapter cable for this. I did a review of an adapter cable a little while back. That was for one of the GPU heat sink blocks, water blocks, and that worked really well, but that only controls, I think, up to 16 LEDs if I recall correctly. But I don't see that available for this, and that seems like that's a bit of a miss for me for Corsair. Now, maybe that's forthcoming. I think this is a pretty new product. Anyways, you're not going to be able to right now connect this to IQ Link. Now, the other cable that's included in the kit is a SATA power supply cable. That is not required if you're only going to do the 2 strips. The only time you need to use that cable, or that it's required, is if you're going to do more than 2 strips and you can inject some additional power. Corsair is calling that for power stability. The cables coming off the end of the strips is quite short, so I did use that SATA power cable because it acts as kind of an extension cable. So both of those cables are included in the box. Inside the box are all of the clips to get you started connecting it to your power supply cable. Now, each type of clip that I'm going to talk about has 3 of them that are included. 2 of them are intended for the end caps, meaning the little clips on it are going to connect to the little black pieces on the end. The third one is kind of a white transparent clip. That's meant to grab onto the silicone strip itself, and that's kind of to put it in the middle somewhere. There are basically 3 different types of clips included. There's a squared off one, so if your power supply cable is kind of a flat cable, you can use the squared off ones. That also does include a rounded off connector clip, and that's what I'm using in this PC here. This is kind of a semi-modular power supply. So the 24-pin power cable is kind of the bundled up version of this. And that's the clip that will fit around that pretty good, but it works the same way. Now, all of those clips that I've just talked about, the rounded off ones and the squared off ones, are for a single strip. The other set that's included is to include both of those together. And basically, I'll show you this here in just a second. But you basically connect both of these strips together. They're wide enough to do both of them together at the same time. Installation is fairly straightforward. You could install these on pre-existing cables in your PC case, or if you're doing a new build, you can install them that way. I think either way, you're going to have to spend a little bit of time to get this to look its best. You're going to have to get those clips installed and kind of have to probably mess around with them to get them looking really good. It's not hard to do. It's a little bit more work to get them looking great though. So I think take the time up front, kind of adjust everything so that it looks good. Now, if you decide to connect these up to your motherboard, you're just going to get whatever lighting effects your motherboard has. But that'll open up the world of, like, say, signal RGB. As long as that can control your motherboard, you should in turn be able to control these. So there should be a wide range of lighting effects you can get. But as far as IQ goes, you're going to get just all of the traditional lighting effects that goes along with this. One of the advantages to using IQ is if you've got other Corsair products involved in your setup, you're going to be able to sync these up, no problem with that. But one of the things I noted with these is that there's not really anything unique as far as lighting effects goes for these power supply cables. Again, comparing this to Lian Li, one of the great things about that setup is the lighting effects that Lian Li has done with those cables is really, really top notch. There's some really cool lighting effects you can get specific to their power supply cables. It's not that these look bad or anything, there's just nothing unique in the Corsair lighting effects that are specific to these cables. It's just all the same stuff that we get with the fans and everything else. This would have been a little bit better had there been some specific RGB lighting elements specific to these cables. But from a pure technical perspective, the actual quality of the light and the strip that you get is really, really nice. It's a nice flexible strip. The lighting in it looks really good, much better than any of the budget stuff that I've looked at. But from that standpoint, this is a very good product. It looks great, it looks good, with all the Corsair lighting effects that you can apply to it. And again, even with that, it would open it up to signal RGB, and there's a whole lot of additional things you could do with this that I think would look really cool. Now, as far as pricing is concerned, as of the time I purchased these were $59.99 for each kit, which again includes the 2 strips, all of the clips to get you started, and the 2 cables, the motherboard adapter cable and the power supply injector cable if you need that. So one thing I wish I had is, like, when I was installing this, like on one of the 24-pin extender cables here, 2 cable strips is not enough to cover this. It really needs 3. If you look at the Lian Li cable, it's got 3 or the equivalent of 3 on that cable. So you have to buy a second kit to do that. But what this does not have, what the kit doesn't have, is one of the cable clips to combine 3 of them together. So you would have to do some sort of, put 2 of them together and then use some of the clips for just a single cable and put it on there. And I don't know how great that's going to look. Now, one thing I will say is when you're combining these together, there's a little hook on the side of each cable, and it's meant for you to kind of slide that hook into the receiver side of the other clip on the other side. I'll show you a close-up of that here. And that's easy to do, so you can combine 3 together like that, but when you're clipping it into the cable itself, there's not a clip that will put 3 of them together. There's not one wide enough. And I don't know why Corsair didn't include that, because I think a lot of people are going to have these extender cables that are flat, and you're going to want to put 3 strips of this together, but it's kind of a pain to do that. So anyways, just be aware of that. I think if you're going to do 3 on an extension cable to kind of match what the Lian Li Strimer is doing, I think it'll look all right. You're just going to have to kind of get creative with how it gets connected together. If you already have the power supply cables and you don't want to go Lian Li for that purpose, is you don't want to replace your power cables or an extender like that, then these cables I think are a good solution for that. The other big pro to this is you do get a choice of connection types. You don't have to use an external controller. You can put it right into your motherboard, which will simplify, adding a whole bunch of additional cables and junk to your PC, or you can choose to go the Corsair controller route if you want to go that way. I think it's important to point out that the Lian Li Strimer cables can be adapted into Corsair IQ. Basically, the Lian Li controller has a motherboard sync cable, which is the standard 3-pin 5-volt ARGB connector. You can convert that to the Corsair 3-pin and then put it in and connect it to the RGB port on one of the controllers, and then you can set it up from there. Now, I've never actually done it, but I do believe you could actually take that Lian Li Strimer RGB portion of the cable, extract it from the cable that it comes with, and put it on your own cable if you want. Maybe I'll do a video on that as well. Again, a couple of the cons to this product is I think there needs to be a cable clip that will accommodate 3 of them together. There's no IQ link adapter, which I think is a big miss, but hopefully that's coming from Corsair. I don't know what they're doing, but that's something that they need to do. Now, the other thing I will mention, and it's not really a con of the product because it looks great on top of that, but it just has to do with the lighting effects. I think Corsair missed an opportunity here. They came out with this product, it looks great. I think they should have come out with 1 or 2 or 3 kind of unique RGB lighting effects. But otherwise, just in IQ, it's just the same old stuff that we've got for everything else, which again looks great. It's not really a con, but I think it's just a missed opportunity. If you had put the IQ Link adapter cable in here and you had some like really cool, cutting edge, brand new, lighting effect that goes with this cable, I think it would be much more of a highly recommend this. I suspect the main reason for not getting a bunch of new lighting effects for this is, unlike Lian Li, it treats 1 strip the same as it does 4, meaning that if you daisy chain 3 strips together, it just duplicates whatever you configure on that first strip onto the other 2. So there's no way to really get any different effects among all 3 of them. Now, what I did in the case here was with the Lighting Node Pro, I put the 3 strips on the 24-pin power supply cable on port 1, and then the little GPU cable, this remaining strip, I put it on port 2. So that way you can get some different looks among different strips within your case. Now, you could get fancy on the 24-pin power supply cable here where you're going to use 3 strips. You could put maybe 2 of these into port 1 and 1 on port 2. Then you could customize some differences in there, but it's not native. It wouldn't be intuitive. It wouldn't be really easy to set that up, nor do I think it would look all that great. Overall, I think the Lian Li Strimer cables look better, especially if you want to go with the Lian Li side. I don't like the Lian Li software, but the lighting effects for those streamer cables, it's really hard to compete with that, with what they've done with it. But if you do choose to use the Corsair RGB power supply cables, I think you'll be happy with it. It looks good. There's definitely some things you can do with it. Just take your time getting it installed, work with the clips and just kind of tweak it until it looks good. Anyways, check this out. I will leave affiliate links in the description below. You can also get these off of Corsair's website. Anyways, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching.